Well, good evening, everybody. How's everybody doing?
Alive.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Hey, what a beautiful day. I made it. I can't believe it myself. I need to be two fellers. All right. Well, welcome back to 603. Y'all have done such an excellent job this week. Let me read through all the stars of the week here. Let's look at what our activity was. So let me share my screen. There we go. There it is. So we were to locate copies of the school emergency crisis plan. How long did it take you locate a copy of your budget containing all 4 budget streams? What's missing? List 5 most important steps in the school-based process and do a facilities inventory walkthrough. All right, so here are the star of the week. Let's see. Leanne shared the results of her inventory. She went out and did it herself and did an excellent job with it. She was the first one who got hers in. Sparkle, who was in last night's group, had a great example of how the black box worked in action. They had an incident that actually happened, and they went through it, and everything worked. She pointed out empty, unlocked classrooms. You know that if you leave your classroom unlocked, kids will find them, and bad things will happen. Michelle printed out a copy of the emergency plan. Said her school does that. That's a good idea because if it's all digital, if something goes wrong, and you know phones don't work real well inside buildings, if something goes wrong, if your signal gets jammed, then you're blind. And so you need all this stuff, all your emergency stuff needs to be in the black box. That's why it's called the black box. I've had people say, well, we got it all on our phones. Well, what if your phones don't work? Well, then the answer to that is, duh, we don't know. Jessica pointed out teachers don't wear their IDs. Again, it's not a big deal unless you use them to get in and out of buildings. And if you have to use open doors with IDs, then they're going to prop the doors. Althea said they had a lot of prop doors because teachers don't wear their IDs. Sean said access control policy in place, but it's not enforced. It's got to be enforced. Doesn't matter how many policies you write. We're not curriculum people. We don't just sit and write policies. We're operations people. We have to make sure they're working. That's a good catch. I like that. And one of the things that happens is having all this security on the front door. If your front office is Grand Central Station and going on there, then they don't look up. They let people in when they shouldn't. So here's the rule. I did this in high school and only had one kickback on this. So when I became principal at Olympic High School, here was the rules. No deliveries in the front office. Don't want delivery people. Don't want the courier. I don't want no deliveries in the front office. And I moved the box to the back around to a different place. And the first time the courier guy came in, he just threw it in the floor. And I said, put it in the back with the rest of the stuff. I said, one of us is going to go home today. I'm betting it ain't me. You either move it to the back or one of us goes home. You get to pick. And after that, I didn't have any more problem with deliveries. Number 2, we don't do any discipline in the front office. Have another place designated to bring kids to for discipline. Number 3, we moved the school nurse out of the front office. We don't do medical attention. You shouldn't have medical attention. You shouldn't have discipline. You shouldn't have deliveries. The people who are manning the gate on the front, who are letting people in, buzzing them in, they should be clear. They should see who they're letting in. And they should not, your front office should be as quiet as a mortuary. It should be a place of business. Having all the security in place doesn't do any good if people are busy. Mary said that they'd lost their plan. It was old. And people weren't using IDs. So if your plan is old and not up to date, it's no good. Melissa said that they were practiced on the evacuation tiers. I like that. When there's a crisis at your school, there's got to be a 3-level evacuation tier system. First one is someplace on your campus, like the ball field. The second one is a place you can walk to, like a nearby church. Third is a place where you can go there and then be bused somewhere else. And I don't mean to make light of this, but not too many years ago, when a kid was shot and killed at Butler High School on the east side of Charlotte over in the Matthews community, they didn't know what the tier system was, and they had kids scattered all over eastern Mecklenburg County. Some were at the ball field, some were at the church, some of them got on the bus and went to Bojangles Arena. It was a disaster. The superintendent, of course, he needed to be fired. He ended up losing his job over that. But you got to have 3 tiers of evacuation, and you got to know that. That's got to be clearly communicated. Those should be in that box. Brenda pointed out that they didn't have theirs together because they had a new administrative team. Here's Dale's rule of thumb for when you go to court. You're only new till lunchtime the first day. Let me say that again. You're only new till lunchtime the first day. After that, you're either part of the problem or part of the solution. You're now, what in the eyes of the court would be a responsible person. That means you can't say, well, we don't have this squared away yet because we're new. You're not new. Are you getting a check? Well, yeah. Well, then you ain't new. That cannot be an excuse as to why you're disorganized and don't have your safety plan together. Robin Skinner was the first one. Robin was the first one to have her OMA 1 in, and she's already got her OMA 2 in. So she's our star on our OMA work, and her work is excellent too, by the way. Kristen made a good point. The minor things will become the major things if not addressed in facilities. That's exactly right. That's called antecedent behaviors. It's the same way with discipline. If you let the little things keep on sliding, eventually they'll become the big thing. Lakeitha made a great point. I really love the point she had to make. This inventory is the beginning of changing her lens. She sees things differently now, walking around doing this inventory. I love that. That's really good. Heather had our first discussion board in. She was our early bird on that one, and it was. I love how she interacted with her principal. She had several other things. Keisha did a very good job with hers. What I liked about hers is she met with the principal for each one of these things. You get your name, people see what you're doing out there. Amanda said that they had a pipe vent that was a problem that everybody had been ignoring. That needs to be taken care of. You know, as school principal, if somebody in maintenance is giving you a hard time or they're ignoring you, then you need to take it to the next level. Rebecca pointed out that they had rosters, but they were out of date. Well, that means you don't have rosters. If they don't have the right names on them, that they're not really not rosters. They're just pieces of paper. Everything's got to be up to date. Shakita said the plan wasn't accessible. Well, then you don't have a plan. If you can't get to it, you don't have a plan. That's a good point. And also she made a good point. If you can't find it, how can you update it? Oh, that's pretty smart. You know, if you can't find it, you can't update it. Anna pointed out the problem at her place is they only have digital access to their emergency plans and then can't get online. What good is that? Again, no plan. Roger said that their plan wasn't appropriate because it wasn't specific enough. It just had generalities. You know, it just had positions and not names. Nobody knew who was going to do what. When you designate all these people in your plan, when you designate all of them, you can't just say this person or this position or that position. You got to name people. You got to name people. And so I hate that we have to be this specific about this, but I'm telling you, the bad guys don't call a week ahead and say, next week, we're going to come over. Y'all need to practice. You know, I've gone to schools and I say, when's the last time you had a fire drill during lunch? Well, we don't ever have one during lunch. Well, why not? Well, it'd be too disruptive. We can't manage it. Well, that's exactly when the fire's going to happen. How do you not understand that? You know, you can't have the fire drill planned at the same time all the time or come on the loudspeaker the day before and say, we're going to have a fire drill tomorrow at 10 because everybody's waiting on the fire drill. You got to be in a constant state of preparation. You got to plan, you got to prepare. You got to do this stuff. that emergency plan. Those facilities, you can delegate the response, the activity of doing this walkthrough, but you can't delegate the responsibility that comes with it. If something goes bad, it's going to be on you. The building catches on fire, if somebody gets hurt, trapped, somebody gets access, that's going to be on you. Everybody knows we prop doors with fans at the lunchroom. I mean, there's just certain things that we've got to understand. Now, the last thing that I wanted to point out, I don't think he's with us tonight. David talked about, he did the facilities walkthrough with the SRO, who had a completely different perspective of school safety than a school administrator does. And that's, unfortunately, that's the perspective that we've got to start gaining, is like the police have, looking for open doors, looking for where an armed intruder or active shooter could get in. We've got to look at it every day. You walk down the hallway, a door, there should never be a door unlocked with kids in it, especially, or empty, because that's where that's going to attract bad things to happen. But we've got to start looking at it more like law enforcement does, as threat assessment, with all the things that go on in school now. We can't just look at it like, there's David coming on with us now. And you can't just look at it like, well, have we got the trash up out of the hallways? No, we got to look at it like law enforcement does. David, I was just pointing out that I liked your post when you walked around with the SRO, that they see things differently. They do more of a threat assessment. School administrators just make sure the trash is up out of the hall and something's not blocking. They look at it from a safety threat assessment perspective. Unfortunately, that's what we've got to start doing now. David, you want to chime in on that one if you can?
Yeah, I was surprised by her reaction when I went through the list with her. She's like, not interested, not interested, not interested, not interested. I'm like, well, how do you see things? She's like, I'm looking at an emergency situation.
Yeah.
You see this cafeteria? I got 4 exits to get kids out of here. And it was really interesting in that regard. Thank you for bringing that up.
Yes, they're always doing threat assessments. Where are the exits? Where's the supervision? Where's the doors? They're looking at it from that. We've got to do our part on facilities, yes, to keep them safe, but we've got to go that extra level, look at those emergency plans, those tiers, those evacuations, those threat assessments. We've got to do that now. That's not something that we did as little as 30 years ago. Modern times in school safety started with Columbine and Jonesboro, Arkansas. I was the high school principal during both of those. That change was a game changer. That was a game changer. And it's only gotten worse since then. That was 30 some odd years ago, 32 years ago, 33 years ago. But we still train administrators to make sure that there's no fire hazards, the cords are wrapped up. Yeah, that's important. But we need to be doing threat assessment every day like the police do. We certainly do. That's unfortunate. I hate that. I hate to be the bearer of bad news. But you got to do that. You get a kid killed, you're done in the business. I don't care if it's your fault or not, you're done in the business. And we don't want that to happen because it's such a tragedy. So those were the stars of the week, the things that caught my eye. Again, work on your OMAs. The ones that have come in have been good. Your activities have been good. I've been very pleased with the work so far. I don't have any criticism of that at all. It's been great. Remember, I read every word of everything you turn in and I take notes. I'll do my part, you do yours, I'll do mine. And don't get bogged down in OMA task 1. Make sure it's done by the end of the week so we can move on to task 2. Task 2 is quick and dirty, so we can get on to 3. We need to stay moving this summer. All right. I want to talk about task stream competency folio. So let me share my screen. So this semester, you need to get, we'll talk about next week's in just a minute here. When we start talking about tonight's content, which is HR, I'll talk about that for next week, what we're looking at. So in our shell, right after Module 1 is our OMA materials. Right after Module 2 is our task stream competency folio. If you click on that button, here's what, as a reminder, we've already got it figured out what your artifacts are. So let's look at those right quick. And I normally have these open, but I want to make sure that I open from the inside so you can see how all this stuff works as a reminder. Let me move this out of the way. All right. So we're to the OMA. Here are the artifacts that you will have generate this summer from doing the OMA and the skip. The SACS report card, board policy manuals, duty roster, master schedule. You say, all right, I need a thing. I've got that document. That's an artifact. What competency does it match? Again, so your NC report card would be a competency for number 10, 16, or 18. What is 10, 16, and 18? I simply scroll down. 10 is global perspective, 16 is results orientation, and 18 is systems thinking. Just that simple. That's where your artifacts. Now, I won't be things, pictures, but if you got, you got your report card, you just upload your report card. There it is. That's an artifact. I use this report card. Here's my district budget or my school budget. That's a thing. That's the thing. Here under the skip, right here it is. Here are your artifacts that come from the 6 evidences. Where do your open-ended ones come from? Got a document there on those as well. So, from the open-ended activities, simply click on that button, download it. So, if you address a large or small group of adults and you've got a picture, an agenda, or minutes, that would fit as an open-ended artifact for either dialogue or inquiry. If you participate in an interview, that's one of the things we hope you get to do under the HR section this summer. That would be change, that would be judgment. If you've got a picture of you, or if you've got like the interview agenda where you get to ask a question or whatever, that would be an artifact, be a thing. If everybody carries a cell phone, get a picture. But here are your open-ended ones. From all the things that you're asked to do as an intern, I've got them categorized in terms of what artifact that would be. The more pictures you have, the better off you are. The more things. We like things. All right. Now, let's remind ourselves how we put those in. We go to task string. We sign in. We go to task string. We sign in again. We don't go into our DRF. We go to our folios and web pages. Do not make another folio. Use the existing one. Open it up. Click on communication. All right, you say, but Dale, the direction says one from the app cell. We did it last semester. One from the SOP. We hadn't done it. We do it next semester. You can do an open-ended one from any of those activities, though. Change management, same way. Creative thinking. You do open-ended. Look at here. Under customer focus, you can do 2 this semester. You can do one for the OMA and the skip. I wouldn't do a third one open-ended. You could do one there if you wanted to, but so as you open each of these up, need one from the skip on delegation. And again, where do you get them? I just showed you the 2 documents. Look at those documents. Oh, I've got this, or oh, I've got that. You can do an open-ended one there if you want to do one. Open-ended, open-ended, open-ended. One from the skip there. One from the skip there. One from the OMA there. Both skip and OMA under responsiveness. Results orientation. One from the skip, sensitivity. One from the OMA. One from the OMA. One from the OMA. One from the skip. And an open-ended one if you want to put one in there. Now, remember, we don't put anything under digital learning competencies. I've got these scattered under these so that, like under communication, one of them must follow so I paired them with the appropriate area. So if you got one for communication, it will fit that description. So you're good to go there. It will automatically fit that description. Anything you put under each of these will fit that as one of these. Just designate which one it is. So that's how you put them in. Now, once you put them in, you hit request comments. You click on the one that you put in, communication. Now, point of personal point here, a privilege. If you put 5 in, wait and put all 5 in, then go back and click the 5 and then hit continue and request comments. So I'll only get one email. This button up here, request comments. If you put something under all of them, then hit it and it'll do them all. And then if you'd like one you didn't put in, you can take it out. Please don't put one in and hit request comments on all. And I got to look through 22 of these to find the one that you put in. So don't send me a dozen emails. And if you know you're only going to put 2 or 3 in, just click on those 2 or 3. So when I go, it tells me where to go and look. But if you hit this button right here, it tells me to look under everything in there. I have to look under all, there's actually 23 places I have to look to find that one that you put in. Don't do that to me. It takes forever. It takes a lot longer to find them than it does to look at them. So, and then send them directly to me and I'll get back to you on them. I'll make sure. And I'll make sure that I know that I'm a reviewer for you. So make sure you do your competencies this semester. Don't get behind on those. Anybody have any questions on how to do competencies? I like working with smart people. Excellent. Let me move this out of the way. That out of the way.
One quick question.
Yes.
Any issue with closing out any of these this summer? Because I was looking at some of them. Excellent. Thank you, sir.
You know, if you were smart, you'd try to get them done as quickly as you can. And you can, not a problem closing them out. If you can get all those in there, that's great. Love it. Love it, love it, love it. You know, it's going to be a killer going back to, you know, as hard as it is to get your hours this summer with 200, you know how hard it is to get them in the fall as well. So, you know, it does not hurt to get stuff done early. That's a good thing. That's a good habit to get into as a school administrator, not being with the procrastinator that waits till the last minute. All right. Let me sign out of that. Remember, when you leave TaskStream, always come up here to the top right and sign out. If it times you out, it won't let you back in for a while. So make sure you do that and close all that out. All right, back to here. Now, let's talk about our case study. It says review case study tonight on this one. And so I'll go to module 4 where the case study materials are. And here's the first case study with cheating strike Bobby out. Now, I'm going to be very blunt on this one. And I'm not going to read it to you. I'm going to stop you share. The teacher is wrong in this one. Now, don't get offended. The next one, the superintendent's wrong. And the last 2, the principal's wrong. But this one, the teacher is wrong. And we do it specifically for that purpose. Many of you are or have been teachers and very defensive about that. Remember, we don't run school for teachers. We run it for kids. You need to be a champion for kids. This is a case where the teacher violated federal law, state law, and local board policy just to try to get a kid. Now, full disclosure, Bobby's probably a turd. That's not a technical term, but it's probably accurate. Bobby's probably a turd, and so is his family. But you can't let teachers take runs at kids. Now, in this particular case, there's a lot of stuff in this case to throw you off track. Doesn't matter who his family is. The irony is in most cases, it's kids of color or poor kids that get treated this way, not the local, school board members' kid. And it happens every day. That's why the law says the principal assigns the final grade. Duties and responsibilities of principals, 115C 288A. Who assigns the final grade? That would be the principal, not the teacher, because of cases like this. Now, I've had students argue, well, the principal did exactly what he was supposed to. He reported it to the superintendent. Remember, things you're supposed to report to the superintendent? This would be one of them. Well, but the superintendent should have. The superintendent did exactly what the law allows him to do. He cannot tell the principal what to do because according to the law, who grades and classifies kids? That'd be the principal. Can the superintendent tell him what to do? Absolutely not. They're both clean. The teacher, first of all, violated federal law. What federal law? Zero tolerance expulsion. That's against the law, federal law, because you get no due process. Since 1969, what the students in school get, according to federal law, the United States Supreme Court, they get due process. If you just say, if you do this, you're out for a year, that's no due process. He didn't get to present witnesses. He didn't get to do anything. His side of the story, he just got put out for a year. You could say, but they say he could go to summer school. Federal law is clear. If you put a kid out, zero tolerance for a year, even if you give him an alternative, that still does not erase the fact that you gave him no due process. You took a year that year kid's life away. You gave him no due process. That's the first law she violated. Second one is she violated state grading policy. You say, but that's a local. Yep. The local interprets it, but the state gives the guidelines. The state says, if you're in North Carolina, the EOG or EOC counts 30%. Classwork counts 40, local made tests, homework 10, out of class assignments 10. All adds up to 100. Now, you could debate me whether this is homework or whether it's an out of class assignment. Doesn't matter. In aggregate, they still can't count but 10%. The teacher made this count more than half, more than 50%, and so she could fail Bobby for the year. That violates state law. Now, if you're in South Carolina, it's still an aggregate 30% on state testing. Y'all do it a little bit differently. Y'all do 20% on SC Ready and 10% on quarterlies, right? That's the way that works in South Carolina. But other than that, the guidelines are pretty much the same. And then local board policy says how much, inside of that. This kid didn't get due process. He got, the teacher wants to fail him for the year over turning in his brother's homework assignment. Remember the standards of arbitrary and capricious? This is a case of being capricious. This is too much punishment for the crime. Now, we also have the standard of double jeopardy. That means you can't punish a kid twice for the same thing. So when it says in the case, and you're going to argue, well, it says that the kid may fail the assignment. It can't say may fail for the year because, again, that would violate federal law. You can't write policy that violates federal or state law. You have to be smart enough to know that when it says the kid may fail, you're talking about the actual assignment. Now, why does it say the kid may fail? You can go one or two ways on this when it comes time to deal with this. You can go, you can go punishment, or you can go academics. Now, I think it's a really bad idea to punish a kid academically. It's hard enough, kids succeed in school already. I'd give him what the handbook says, which the most you could give him is 1 day of ISS. Let him make up the assignment, move on about my business, and not punish him academically. Or you could give him a 0 on that assignment, which would be like 1 point for the year, or give him a reduced, if you wanted to make, if the assignment was important, why wouldn't you have him go back and redo it? I'd give him the 1 day of ISS, have him go back and do it. I don't like the idea of punishing a kid academically ever. That's bad practice, folks. We got to get teachers out of that. Taking points off, grading. I don't do late work. If your work's good, you get 100. If it's not, you get a 0. You didn't get it done. It's either 100 or a 0. No late work. Why would I punish you academically? That's the business that I'm in. So it says may fail. That means you have the option. You can fail him on the assignment, go on about your business, give him a 0, which in the yearly grade can't be more than probably 1 point on the whole yearly grade because it's only 10 points for all homework for the year. Or you can go the other direction, have him redo the assignment and give him 1 day of ISS. And if he makes 100, you give him 100. But you can't do both. You can't give him a 0 and put him in ISS for a day. That's double jeopardy. But failing a kid for the year overturning his brother's homework assignment when the handbook says 1 day of ISS is the most punishment, that's very capricious. That's way more punishment than the law allows. Again, me and Sean's out back smoking and Olivia catches us. She sends him back to class. That'd be arbitrary. She shoots me. That's capricious. Smoking's bad for you, but surely you wouldn't shoot somebody over smoking.
That depends. Do you deserve to be shot?
Olivia's a lot tougher than she looks. I can tell just by looking at her. She might do something. But you know, as ridiculous as that sounds, it's just as ridiculous to fail a kid for the year overturning in his brother's homework assignment. We're trying to get kids to succeed academically. We got to be champions for them. You know, the only issue is really in this case is what do you do with a teacher that would do this? Now, many of you are soft-hearted, and that's a good thing. I'm not. She couldn't work for me anymore. I'd fire her on the spot. I mean, short of physically or sexually abusing a child, you've done the worst thing. A kid could bring a gun and get less punishment than putting them out for a year. And you're going to do that overturning his brother's homework assignment. How could I mean, that borders on a mental health issue, somebody that crazy. Do you really want them in your building? Can you really trust what they'll do? Now, most everybody says I would put her on an action plan. Well, I could go for that. I mean, I get it. It's hard to find teachers now, but do you really want the bad ones? I go back to Dr. Renita Griffin Jordan, who works with me a lot, principal in Durham. Now, I said principal in Durham. Nobody's beating the door down who work in Durham, folks. And she said, I'd rather have nobody than a bad body. And she works in a place where they don't have nobody. I mean, they don't have people bum rushing them to try to get jobs in Durham. I worked in the bad places in Charlotte. I became a junior high principal in Charlotte, left the central office in Burke, went to Charlotte. They doubled my salary. And I thought, boy, I'm in high cotton until I got there and found out I had 37 vacancies. Teaching vacancies, 37. I was out on Central Avenue, flagging down cars. Can you teach school? I asked the man if he wore a chicken suit. When he said no, I hired him. I can't make that up. Gene Kidd. The truth of the matter is I'm trying to remember if it wasn't the Charlotte Coliseum, it was Big I think. Now it's Bojangles. The original Charlotte Coliseum on Independence was right across from the school. And our booster club for our junior high ran the concession stand at the Checkers minor league hockey games. And they had this bunch of drunks that would jump up, dress up in chicken suits and get out on the ice during intermission and act the fool. And I said, now, Gene, said he was a big hockey fan. I said, now, Gene, you're not one of them fellows that wears the chicken suits because the parents here will crucify me if I hire, one of them because they're just famous drunks, get locked up and fight all the time. He said, no, I'm a fan, but I know what you're talking about. No, I don't wear the chicken suit. I'm just a good fan of the team. I said, all right, then I'll hire you. But if I find out you're one of them drunks that wears the chicken suit, I'll have to let you go because the parents will thrash me. But that, it was hard to find people. It was hard to find people, but I'd rather have a nobody than a bad body. A teacher like this, I can't abide people that would be this abusive to children. We're in the children business. But that would be up to you. If you come up with an action plan, I could live with that. But here's again, this is not about what the kid did. This is not about the principal. This is not about the superintendent. This is about focusing on what that teacher did in terms of what laws and policies did she violate in doing this. You should document all those things. All right. So in 2 weeks, I expect to see a PowerPoint that your team has collaboratively developed, and where you go through all the questions from the case, and then you go through the ethical paradigms. And in the first one here, she has she has violated all four of the ethical paradigms: care, justice, critique, and profession. And tell us how. Obviously, she doesn't care. Profession, but address each of those four ethical paradigms, as well as the law that she has violated. You could spend some time on the school to prison pipeline. What happens when kids fail? How likely are they to graduate from high school if you fail a kid? Not very. Decreases the probability by 2/3, doesn't it? What's the probability that kid ends up going to jail? About 30%. Why would we do that? There's a lot of good research. California Dropout Research Project It's the best data in the world. California Dropout Research Project. A lot of other stuff that also talks about the school to prison pipeline. Failing the kid ought to be our last resort. Use sparingly. It's like a nuclear weapon. It should not be our first line of discipline when a kid turns in his brother's homework assignment. Oh my Lord. You've altered the course of this kid's life. Doing something that bad to them. Got to think about things like that. Questions about what's due in 2 weeks. All right. So let's talk about human resources a little bit tonight. So let's look, as we normally do, at what our assignment will be next week. Interview an administrator concerning human resources practices. This should include position openings, job announcements, obtaining candidates, interviewing process, and hiring process. I've kind of, it's kind of repeated down here, but this is where you kind of write the synopsis of what you found. Oh, that's the first part. Second part is inquire about employee assistance, compensation plans, benefits. Finally, determine how position openings is conducted. I mean, what is the process? So here's the deal. Due process has 2 parts. Everything has 2 parts. Content and process. Same way with due process. Substantive due process. What is the hiring process? There's 9 steps. You'll find them when you do your research. That's the substance. The procedural due process is who does those 9. Now, let me give you my example. I was principal in Burke County schools, and I was principal in Mecklenburg County schools. That's kind of the alpha. I was principal in Rutherford County, but we won't even talk about that because they weren't very good, and so we'll just leave it at that. But Burke County was pretty good in terms of they made sure that all 9 things happened. The difference was principal had to do 8 of them. Principal had to do 8 of the 9 things that the Equal Opportunity Employment Commission, which is federal law, says that you have to do to hire somebody in a state agency. Remember, this is not a private school. Public schools have to follow federal state law. The Equal Opportunity Employment Commission, EEOC, is federal. It's federal law that says you will do these 9 things. Now, it doesn't say who will do those 9. It just says you will do these 9 things. The question is in your district, and what you go and find out is who does these 9 things. In Burke County, the only thing that we didn't do, we didn't send a recommendation form to the board. From the superintendent or to the superintendent and then to the board. The HR did that, but we did everything else. We did reference checks. We did background checks. We took them to get drug tested. We determined if there was an opening. We did the job announcement. We did everything. We did the interview. We did the curriculum interview, and we did the individual interview. We did 8 of the 9 things. When I got to Mecklenburg County, we only did one thing. We just told them who we wanted. That was it. We just called our HR analyst and said, I need this. And they would send me 3 applicants. I picked the one I wanted. That's all I had to do was send that. That was it. I didn't have to do background checks. I didn't have to do references. I didn't have to do anything. When they came to me, they were ready to be hired, ready to go. Now, there's going to be a question about walk-ins or people wanting to call you about a job or references. When you're in a system like Charlotte Meck, you can't take resumes. You can't talk to people. Everybody has to be vetted and come to you that way. Now, in Burke County, since I ran the entire process, I could talk to people on the street. People could call me. They could come by. I mean, I could engage with applicants because I was going to go through the process. Charlotte, you could not engage with the applicants at all. The only people you could engage with were people who were already vetted and ready to be hired. You couldn't take resumes. You couldn't take phone calls. You could not do any of that. That way we weren't arbitrary. That way that somebody couldn't sue us. Well, Dale talked to this person, wouldn't talk to me. Or, he put his finger on the scale. Nope. The process was completely independent, and I just picked the one I wanted. I ran the process in Burke County. So, I just had to keep up with all that. So if I took somebody's resume, I had to take everybody's resume. If I talked to somebody on the phone, I had to talk to everybody on the phone. But that wasn't a problem. Wasn't that many people. Didn't have that many openings. In Charlotte, you don't want to do that because, again, 37 vacancies, 17 at the high school one year. You would spend all your time doing this. That's why they hire people to do this for you. So you've got to figure out, your job is to determine who does what of that in that procedural due process, who carries out those 9 substantive things. There's 9 specific things that you do to hire somebody. Who carries out those 9 things? That's important. Don't get it wrong. That's federal law. You get fired over that quickly if you violate that. So you got to know. All right. Now, second half of that. This is on me because I hired her. I had a teacher that I hired, a brand new teacher, first-year teacher. At the end of the first month, she came in and said, I quit. So what are you talking about? I said, I didn't make as much money as I was promised. I'm quitting. I said, well, explain that to me. She said, here's my check. I looked at it and I said, you do remember at the first teacher work day, when I passed out those forms, if you wanted your 12-month salary, wanted your 10-month salary given to you over 12 months? And she said, yeah. I said, it wasn't an IQ test. If you get $20,000 and we divide it up into 10 monthly, then you get $2,000 a month. But if we divide it up among 12 and spread it over 12 months, you get $1,500 a month. How'd you not know that? But I hired somebody that dumb. I actually did. That didn't understand that you get the same amount of money, but if you divide, if the divisor is bigger or smaller, it changes the amount. But outside of something like that, and that absolutely happened to me. I wish I was smart enough to make that up. I hired somebody that dumb. So that was on me. Wasn't on her for being that dumb. That was on me for not knowing that she was that dumb when I hired her. I absolutely can't make that up. But outside of that, don't enter into conversations about steps, experience, national board pay, advanced degree pay, South Carolina, that plus 30. Know the person over in HR, and that's the person you should be talking to that can talk to them about their individual compensation, unless it's something simple like they didn't understand that their check would be different if they got it divided different. You need to let them, because you can't fix that and you don't know all the ins and outs. And they might not exactly tell you the exact truth. And then employee assistance. I inherited a drug addict. And when I took her to get drug tested and she failed a drug test, I couldn't fire her because she was receiving employee assistance for substance abuse. Now, he said, Dale, you sound awfully hard-hearted. Well, because I couldn't move on from her, I couldn't hire a long-term sub in her place. I had to use a day-to-day sub. Now, not many people are going to want to come to your building every day and work as a long-term sub for day-to-day pay. It's twice as much. If you're a long-term sub, you make twice as much as a day-to-day sub. So people are looking for long-term sub jobs. So your best subs won't come day-to-day. Thankfully, at that, I had one long-term sub at that school, and I was able to assign her to that position. But I struggled. That was after a while. I struggled until I could get that done. And we made up the difference locally in the pay. But you need to know. I mean, they can get mental health counseling, if they've been through divorce or loss or bereavement, lost a loved one or whatever. You got to know what that is. You got to know enough to know to refer teachers to it. But you need to talk to the person at the central office about what are those things you have. Don't get caught up in retirement benefits. and sick days. And if you've got shared sick leave, don't get caught up in that either. And I would implore you to be careful about asking teachers to participate in shared leave, that voluntary shared leave. You got somebody that's sick and they use up all their sick days, because teachers will complain that you are that you are putting undue influence, that you are pressuring them. You got to be careful about all that. You need to find out if your district does shared leave. Find out all the benefits, all the compensation, all the retirement stuff. You need to find all those things out, how it works in your district. How do we employ people? What is the process? That last one there is do you use something like AppleTrack or something like that? Find out what the actual system that you use is, so that you'll know and that you can get well versed in it. You can learn the ins and outs of it. So that's the idea on HR. Now, last personal point of privilege before we look at the slideshow, and I don't read them, but we'll look at a couple of things here about human resources. More than 20 years, closer to 30 years. Let me see. I'm trying to remember what year it was. Probably 2000. So 30 years after I graduated from college, exactly 30 years after I graduated from college, I got a phone call at work one day out of the blue. And it was one of my fraternity brothers from college. I hadn't seen him in 30 years. And he called me, "Hey, how you doing?" You know it's never good. Nobody calls me unless they want something. And he said, "My daughter finished school at UNC Charlotte, and she wants to work in Charlotte. She wants to work in the school system, and they won't even give her an interview." And I said, "Well, do you know?" "No, don't know. They won't tell me." I said, "Well, you're an attorney. You know they can't tell her why." "Well, yeah, but I said, I'll be glad to look into it now. But, before I go and look, no, she's a good girl. She's graduated, top of her class. Everything's wonderful. Clean as a whip. Can't figure out." So I was in charge of the police force at that time. That was on my side of the aisle. I think I was assistant superintendent or associate at that time. But anyway, so I went over, asked the police chief. He pulled it up and said, "My God," said, "she's Bonnie Parker, Bonnie and Clyde," said, "she's been arrested. She's been convicted of 2 felonies, assaulted a police officer, drug charges." And so I called him back and said, "I don't believe you were quite honest with me." "Well, she was just a kid and all that stuff." But no, she was an adult. She was in college when all this stuff happened. So my point is this: even though at times you can know the process for hiring people in your district, and don't step outside of that process. Don't try to do a friend a favor. Don't put your thumb on the scale. It won't go well for you. Whatever the process is, follow it to the T. You say, "Well, nobody will know." Yeah, somebody will know. You'll get found out. The news will beat you home. Remember, federal law. We've talked about it. You violate federal law, there is no coming back from that. Federal law is a dismissal offense. You're gone. You lose your house. So, I don't care if you know this person or you knew this kid or they're a neighbor or what. No, everybody goes through the process, whatever it is. That's what you've got to learn is this is the process, and you have to make a commitment tonight. This is like the benediction here. I'm here just as I am, playing in the background in the Baptist church. I'm asking for your soul tonight. Make a commitment tonight that you will follow whatever the process is, no matter how long involved, how crazy you think it is, or how much extra work it puts on you. You won't shortcut the process, and you won't put your thumb on the scale, because I'm telling you, it'll cost you your house. You'll get found out. People that you wouldn't think would lie to you will lie to you. It happened to me. So that's just a word of caution. All right, let's look at our materials under the week. I'm watching our time now. You know that in 2 weeks it's going to be a marathon, And so, this week and next, I'm going to try to make it up by doing 1 hour and not, because we might go 3 hours on case study night. If we get done in 2, I'll be happy. But I always try to be mindful of your time. We're right on time here. We've got our 10 minutes left for our content now. We're right on time. So under this week, we've already done EVOS. We did it last semester. And here's the NCEA Teacher Evaluation Manual. So what I want to make sure you understand is a teacher's final evaluation in North or South Carolina is 75% on their formal observation and 25% on student performance. It's not all just their observations. Remember, in South Carolina, for those of you, some of you use EVOS, those of you who don't use student learning outcomes, SLOs, it's the same thing. It's student performance. That's 25% of the teacher's evaluation finals, summative evaluation score. 75% is from the observations that you do. Now, assistant principal manual says you got to do those observations. That's why I've got it in there. It's state law that you've got to do that. You do your observations. Now, here's the tricky part, folks, and I'll stop my share again. When you first become an administrator, if you've not gone through NESIS training in North Carolina or teacher evaluation training in South Carolina, you can't do evaluations yet. Does that change how many the administrative team at your school has to do? Absolutely not. Whitney, tell us about that.
Well, like for example, at my school, we don't have anybody but our principal. We have no AP, we have no curriculum coach, so it falls on her regardless. She would just have to get the training done.
Yeah, and so here's the thing. Thank you, Whitney. It doesn't matter how many personnel you have, or if one of them can't do it. The amount of evaluations is in state law. These beginning teachers, they have more. What is it? 4 you have to do. And I'm not talking about the peer review ones. I'm talking about administrative. Now, as they move up in status and years of experience, they have fewer, but nobody has less than 1 or 2. Say you've got a staff of 60 teachers and because you got so many young ones, you average 3. That's 180 evaluations that you've got to do, formal evaluations. You've got a 3-person administrative team. That's 60 per. That's 1 every other day already. What happens if one of those new administrators is not certified to do NESIS training evaluation, state evaluations yet? Do we just knock off 60 of them? No. The other 2 have just got to do 100. They've got to do 90 rather than 60. You will not endear yourself to your administrative team members if you can't pull your weight. Just like if you can't put your data in Power School, you better go get trained. So my charge to you tonight is to go and find out what kind of training you have to have in your district in order to do teacher observations. A lot of times they offer that training in the summertime. I'll give you credit on your internship hours if you can go and get NESIS trained this summer. Wouldn't that be great? So that when you join that administrative team this fall, you can say, I can do, and when you're doing those, I can do interviews. That's one of the things when we did the 14 from Gaston County, we put them through the 5-semester program. We did a double on their 604 semester, their 4th semester. We did a double. We did 604 for an hour and we did NESIS training for an hour for the whole semester. When they got through, they were certified. 12 of them walked right into AP jobs and could do evaluations the first day. Man alive. Was that not? Gaston County loved it. They're begging us to do it again. They loved it. You walk into a principal interview and with the principal and say, I can do Power School. I can enter data in. I had them show me. I sat down with one of the APs in the summer when the school was out. They showed me how to put data in. I know how to do it. I went and got NESIS trained. I know I can do. This district says I can do teacher observations. Wow, that makes you ultimately employable. And we'll give you your internship hour credit for it too as well. But you need to understand that those formal observations are 75% of the teacher's evaluation, and they are set in stone by the state. There's no waiver on them. You got to be in the rooms, and you can't be doing drive-bys where you just walk through the room for a minute and claim it's an observation. I mean, a walkthrough takes 15 minutes, but those aren't formal observations. Those are informal. I won't ask you because I don't, you know, I'm afraid you'll tell me, but I'll bet you there's people sitting in this room tonight that have had drive-bys and counted them as, you know, where they were in their room for 5 minutes or less and counted them as observations. How do you know what's going on in your rooms as a principal? Our last case study is going to be about that. It's going to be about EC and inclusion, but also about principal that never went to the rooms. When parents came to complain about what was going on in the room with the teachers, she didn't know. Oh. So you've got to understand 75-25. The number of formal observations is set by the state. It is not debatable. It is not up for interpretation. Those things have to be done. There's a manual. There's a teacher's manual. The principal's manual says you got to do it. The teacher's manual says this is what we're looking for. That's the NESIS manual. If you can get trained, that would be great. Now, the last thing is Dr. Griffin Jordan. She's wonderful. I just love her. Her daughter's at Harvard this year, but Renita is just the finest lady. You'd love her. I hate that. I'd love to have her with me this summer. I'd give a gold guinea if I could have her with me. I just love her. She does the job every day, but she's such an elegant lady. But she has put together for you a wonderful slideshow. Wonderful. And here's 2 different versions. It's the same one. We'll just click on this one randomly. And she has summarized what human resources is for a principal as from the role of a sitting principal. She's done it right here. She has all 4: the recruitment, the hiring, the evaluating, and then the supporting, which is the professional development plan that y'all did. And she's gone through all of it, how it works in Durham, you know, in Durham County. And right here, she's done the rationale. Here's your NESIS training, what you got to do, how the evaluation process works. Here's how that state, you know, which ones of them, you know, which staff members do you have to evaluate? Right here, it tells you what the state law is on each one of them. For your non-teacher, for your like psychologists and counselors and those people. Right here, the 25%, again, standard 6. Standard 6, which is 25% of the teacher's evaluation, which is student performance, which is either SLOs or EVOS. She's got that in there that tells you why you have to do that. It talks about the certified staff, the cycle for your certified people, and then your classified, it has that as well right here. And that will vary by district. You need to find out from your district how often you have to do your custodians, your data manager, your administrative, you know, all these people. And then the support, teachers market, but a bad, you know, nobody's better than a bad body. And she talks about that, how to cater to your dedicated subs. Make sure that when you're doing swag and lunches that you invite them. And she, you know, things to never forget: your employee assistance program, teacher appreciation, lead, don't micromanage, practice what you teach, and then recruit and retain. Here are the keys to that. You know, some of her tips and tricks of recruiting and retaining good teachers. And then your law that goes with this, and right here, here's her final thoughts. Great vision without great people is irrelevant. We can never fall short when it comes to recruiting, hiring, maintaining, and growing our workforce. It is the employees who make our organization success a reality. There you go. It's a circle of life. This is one of the best PowerPoints I've ever seen to summarize something as complex and as long and involved as hiring is, as personnel and human resources. She's summarized it and got the law, and it's right there in front of you. So if you want to know about HR, that's as quick and easy. And she's got 2 different versions of the same thing though. So that's human resources. So that's your job this week is human resources. You're going to be working on that. Try to have everything in by Sundays or Mondays or Tuesdays. Again, there's no late work, but just don't get behind. All right. I finished right on time. Look at me. Questions you have for me. It's almost like I do this for a living. I get to practice on Tuesday and then Wednesday. Y'all get the better version on Wednesdays and Tuesdays. They're the guinea pigs on Tuesdays. I always teach Tuesday, Wednesday. Anybody have any questions, anything? Let me say it again. Let me remind you, I read every word, every time. So make it your best work. Get it in. That's always good. I'm always glad when you come and join me. It makes me feel good. I like to get to look at you. Try to get to know you this way. But I think you get more out of it doing it live, but you can always watch the video. All right, questions. I'm done with my part.
Got a South Carolina question for you.